There are basically three consequences to an action. And when we say action, when the Buddha refers to action, he's talking about action of mind, thought, action of speech, or physical action. So if I am very generous with you, then I'm more likely to be generous again. And someone's more likely to be generous with me. And I'm likely to find myself in a generous environment. So there's three things going on there. If I yell at you, I'm more likely to yell again, repeating a pattern. I'm more likely to be yelled at, and I'm more likely to be in a yelling type of environment. So that's basically the three consequences of any action, thought, speech, and physical action. So the key here is, do you want to break the pattern or not? Can you even recognize the pattern? That's usually the first place is, can we recognize, can we observe it? Can we notice it's going on? If you don't see it, you don't notice it, you don't observe it, then you don't really have a chance.
Welcome to the Spiritual Forum, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. I just want to send a shout out to everybody who supports this podcast, all those who donate, and anybody who interacts on YouTube or any other place where I'm posting, Instagram. I'd also appreciate it if you could go to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review. For some reason, Apple Podcasts keeps taking my reviews away. They've been there for like 2 years and suddenly they're gone the next day. So weird things happen on these platforms. And so if you haven't left a rating or review, I'd really appreciate if you do that on Apple Podcasts and subscribe to my YouTube channel. So let me introduce you to my guest. And this is Mordy Levine. He's an entrepreneur, a meditation teacher, and the president of the Jingmei Limpa Center in the San Diego area. He's the creator of a meditation program called Meditation Pro Series, which is designed to alleviate chronic health issues. And he wrote a book together with Lama Lanang Rinpoche called The Beginner's Guide to Karma. Lama Lanang Rinpoche was born in the Amdo region of historic Tibet, and he received traditional monastic education, and he had several teachers in multiple lineages of Tibetan Buddhism, including His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. Apparently he's on retreat now, so he wasn't able to join us. But I had both Rinpoche and Mordy on episode 220. That was about a year ago. And we discussed their book, A Beginner's Guide to Tibetan Book of the Dead. And today we're going to be focusing on their book, The Beginner's Guide to Karma. Welcome, Mordy.
Thank you. That was a long twisting there with the name. Sorry about that. Next time I'm just going to come on as John Smith and Mary Jo. Call it simple.
Yeah, it took me a while to get it right. It's weird. I usually don't practice or prepare much for my podcast, but I did go over a few of these pronunciations. I think I got. Oh no, I didn't say it. That Rinpoche teaches Vajrayana.
Perfect.
Vajrayana.
Perfect.
Okay.
There you go.
I did. I went and I Googled pronunciation and put that one in. So I was ready to do that one right. But Mordy, it's great to have you back. I think your books are so great. They kind of break things down for the beginners. And so before I have you jump into telling us a little bit about your backstory, I want to do a little bit of rapid fire questions. You said you were game for that. You ready for that?
Yes.
They'll be pretty easy. So if you could think of your favorite place to be, where would that be?
My meditation cushion.
Ah, that does not surprise me. I kind of anticipate an answer like that. Do you have a word or a phrase that guides your life or that you find particularly meaningful?
Sharing.
Sharing. Nice. You want to expound on that just a little bit?
Yeah, I think we're all so tightly wound into ourselves, which is another way of saying creating negative karma. And when we are able to share, that actually creates positive karma.
Nice. Okay, thank you for that. And last, is there a person outside your own family in all of history, including today, that you particularly admire?
all the great beings that have preceded us, and it doesn't even have to be Buddhist. I mean, I'd love to have a cup of coffee with Jesus Christ or the Dalai Lama, or of course the Buddha, or Moses. So all these great beings. I've done a number of interviews when I was the podcast interviewer from people of different religions, and what I noticed very quickly after about 3 minutes is they all felt the same. They all had this sense about them and about love and compassion. So we all think we're so different, but we're not that different.
Wouldn't that be a lovely dinner party to have
Yeah.
all those
Crazy,
beings?
crazy, right? Mhm.
If you get it together, will you invite me?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Put me on the list.
You're going to be one of the great beings. Of course I do.
There we go. There we go. And you too. That's lovely. Okay, so I know you shared your backstory in our episode that we recorded a year and a half ago, but I think it'd be good for this audience now to hear a little bit about how you got together with Rinpoche and the work that you're doing together and how you started writing books together.
Sure.
And tell us a little bit about how you found Buddhism.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it under 5 or 6 hours. Is that okay? We have time?
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great.
No, I'll keep it short. So yeah, I mean, I've been a Buddhist now since my 20s, so that's like I think 250 years ago. And as I approached my late 50s or early 60s, I started thinking, as many of us do, maybe not you, about, well, what's the next chapter going to be like? Meaning, what happens after we die? And Tibetan Buddhism is really maps that out quite clearly. So I started looking for a teacher and miraculously found Lama Lam, who's a master at bringing guiding students and other people as they prepare for death and through the afterlife and hopefully an auspicious rebirth. And after studying with him for a while, we wrote the book, as you mentioned, Tibetan Book of the Dead for Beginners, which is really a guide to how to live, how to die, and how to hopefully be reborn with an auspicious rebirth. And then the last few years, we wrote this book because we feel that, a lot of us in the human race maybe are not behaving as well as we could. And if we had a deeper understanding of how karma works, then that might improve the world. So that was our motivation behind this book.
Yeah, you've already answered one of my questions because I was wondering about the timeliness of this book. What caused you to write this book now? I mean, karma's been around for a while, but it sounds like you're just kind of looking out, like the rest of us are doing, and going, maybe if we all kind of got this, we might shift who we are. Is that kind of what your thinking is?
Yeah, I think there's a misunderstanding of karma because we use the word all the time. Very, oh, that's my karma. That we use it different ways, and usually we use it incorrectly. So this is for anyone's interested. It's a short, clear book on what exactly karma means from a Eastern perspective. It's not just Buddhist. Hindus and Jains and everyone uses that word. And frankly, even in Judeo-Christian world, Western, there's a sense of karma. They don't call it karma, but you do something right, you get rewarded. You do something bad, you get slapped on the wrist. So we all believe in karma to some degree, and this goes into a little bit more detail on what really is going on behind that word.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it. I mean, like, how would you define karma? You say it's been misused a lot. So, how would you define it so that people can understand it of all faiths?
So, definition of karma literally means action. Now, we think of action of just moving the body physically, but that's not what karma means. It applies to action of thought, action of speech, and and physical action as well. History of karma goes back over 3,000 years. It preceded the Buddha. It preceded Hinduism, for that matter. It was in the Upanishads. And it's taught in slightly different ways in all Eastern religions. What Buddha did, what he examined it, is he said, he explained and taught that karma is much more sophisticated than the simple linear cause and effect that most of us think it is. The crux of karma is really based on motivation, intention. For example, if I'm going to donate, money to the nonprofit down the street, I'm going to donate $100. Why? Because I heard my neighbor donated $90. And if I donate 100, I'm going to know that. And that's, it's important to me when that end of year program comes out showing my name $100. Or I could donate to that nonprofit because I want to help the children. I want them to have food. They're suffering. So motivation is the same action, but motivation is very different there. And the Buddha also showed that we can stop perpetuating negative karma, negative things that happen to us, negative things that we do, and finally plays a primary role in determining how we die and how we go into the afterlife, and what situations we are reborn. So that's how Buddha differentiated karma and explained it differently than anyone that's preceded him.
I do want to talk about intention in a few minutes because it's something that's I find very perplexing. But before I do that, do you think that if everyone really understood this, that karma, the law of cause and effect, that would really change people's behaviors?
Absolutely. Because once you understand that the core, that the mind leads everything, then you can go into your mind and examine it, and you can say, oh, that's what I'm thinking about. Oh, do I want to change that? I can change that. That's where free will comes in. We can think whatever we choose to, especially if we retrain our mind. If we stay stuck in our habitual patterns, well, that's another story. Then, of course, not a lot of new, fresh, creative things going on there. But if we choose to retrain our minds so that we can be free and think and speak and act intelligently, appropriately, then yeah, we can certainly change our lives and those around us as well.
I think habitual patterns is one of the hardest things to A, see, and then B, have the energy to do something about, unless your life starts really falling apart. And then it's like, wow, okay, now I need to do something.
Yeah, and hopefully, we don't wait till our life starts falling apart, because sometimes our life starts falling apart and then we grasp for straws, or we
Uh-huh.
grasp for the short term illusory solution, and that's not necessarily the most appropriate way. So it's rare that something unfortunate happens and we start looking within, looking inward, and try to retrain ourselves in that way. So, but if we can do that, that's really where we believe true freedom and true joy um, live, and not by let me go make more money.
It always comes back to money, doesn't it?
Welcome to America.
It's funny about money. I used to think the quote, "Money is the root of all evil." I used to think, well, that's not quite right. It's the attachment to money. It's the love of money.
Well said.
But I'm starting to kind of think that at the bottom of anything that kind of looks evil is money. If you keep digging deeper, whenever you find something that seems evil, at the bottom of that, we're going to find money most of the time.
Well, I think what you said earlier is absolutely true. What you'll find is money might be the trigger, but at the end of the day, it is our approach to it and our attachment to it, and
Yeah,
how we view it. That's really the essence of it.
yeah, yeah. All right, so just to quote something from your book, this is a quote of the Buddha: "I am the owner of my actions, heir to my actions, born of my actions." And then he goes on to say, "Whatever I do for good or for evil, to that I will fall heir." And I just think that is really a lovely quote, just to know that whatever our actions are, that we will fall heir to them in some way, whether it's instantly or 5 months from now or 10 years from now, or perhaps in another lifetime.
Well said. Yeah. So there are basically three consequences to an action, and when we say action, when the Buddha refers to action, he's talking about action of mind, thought, action of speech, or physical action. So if I am very generous with you, then I'm more likely to be generous again. And someone's more likely to be generous with me. And I'm likely to find myself in a generous environment. So there's three things going on there. If I yell at you, I'm more likely to yell again, repeating a pattern. I'm more likely to be yelled at, and I'm more likely to be in a yelling type of environment. So that's basically the three consequences of any action, thought, speech, and physical action. So the key here is, do you want to break the pattern or not? Can you even recognize the pattern? That's usually the first place, is, can we recognize, can we observe it? Can we notice it's going on? If you don't see it, you don't notice it, you don't observe it, then you don't really have a chance.
Yeah, it's interesting that the third thing is I find myself in an environment of I find myself surrounded by yelling, or I found myself surrounded by generosity, depending upon what your actions are. That's really a key part we don't really think about.
Yeah, it's it's a wake up call. Mhm.
Yeah, like where if you had to place yourself in a world, what would that world be? I mean, I think most of us say we want to place ourselves in a kind world, in a loving world, in a caring world, in a generous world, in a world that's comforting, in a world that's creative. And so that's all just tapping on our minds and our hearts and saying, okay, that's who we should be then.
Right, no, 100%. What I like about what you said is what you I think we're implying also, or what I'll imply, is that you can actually do that right now. You say, "What world do you want to live in?" You can do that right. Well, I gotta go by, I gotta go there, travel. No, it doesn't work like that. That's an illusion. You want to live in a kind world? Do that right now. Focus your attention, refocus your mind. You want to live in an angry world? Well, we know how to do that. So you don't have to go very far.
That's really a good point because we do, our mind does play this really weird game with us. Like someday, when everything is in a certain order, or when after I do this and after I do that, or after this is done for me, or when I get this, I get that, then I'll be in this world that I want. But what you're saying is free will gives us that choice in every single moment, and we can make that choice right now.
Yeah, beautifully said.
Yeah.
Next time you're going to write the book.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's get to the part where I really have a little bit of trouble with, and that's intention. I'm just gonna, full disclosure, I have a little trouble with intention being the kind of the driving force of whether our karma is good karma or bad karma, positive or negative karma. Because now maybe if you go deep enough in the heart, you see the intention, but I feel like we live in a world where, for example, a lot of people in key positions or politicians, elected leaders, I mean, they may have good intentions, but they so fail on delivery that it harms so many people. And and it's like, well, I had good intentions. Was that good enough? Did you really do your best to really help people? Or was it just your intentions that you're relying on? And that's kind of where I have a little bit issue about intentions.
Well, intentions are very I don't want to say shady characters. That's not quite right. But we have mixed. There's a lot of mixed motivation behind what we do. It's not always pure versus evil. There's a lot of stuff going on in that mind of ours. That's number one. Number two is I don't like to. I have to remind myself not to judge other people, including politicians, because I have no clue what their thinking is, what their intentions are. If they don't know, and I certainly don't know. I barely know my intentions half the time. So this is not a book meant to train us so that we can look out and say, that was negative over there. That person's positive karma. Oh, that one over there, the intention, that's not productive, doesn't make us any happier, doesn't reduce anyone's suffering. So the goal, I hate to use that word, of the book is really to allow us to a path or a map to retrain our mind to understand our mind, our senses, our intentions, and understand that we have the ability to make a choice between positive or negative. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. Come back to your questions. A lot of stuff going on out there. People may or may not have good intentions doing horrible things. I can explain it generally, but certainly not specifically. If I was an enlightened being, I could probably tell you exactly what caused what was their intention, what back to childhood from 3 lifetimes ago, and this is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I'm not going to do that today.
Well, and it sounds like what you're doing is redirecting my looking outward. You're redirecting that looking inward. And so that's the whole point of the book that you wrote. And that's the whole point of helping people understand karma is to apply it to ourselves.
Right.
And we can measure our own hearts. I may not know your heart or the heart of somebody else down the street or a heart of somebody famous on the television, but most of us can be connected enough to our own souls to understand what our intentions are and try not to fool ourselves in that way and try to and then seek having the purest of intentions. So that's a good reminder that this is all about the individual and applying it to themselves.
Well, yeah, I agree, agreed.
Yeah, yeah. All right, all right. My little spidey, my little judgments are going on out there.
We all do it. We all do it.
It's all human. Yeah. Okay. So can we move to some of the things that are in your book that I just thought were interesting? I'm sure it's just basic stuff, but like the five poisons, ignorance, attachment, aversion, pride, and envy. Can you expound on those a little bit? Because I think those are really helpful when I went through them, and I'm looking for, okay, where am I? I've got all of them, but which is the one that I really need to work on the most?
Well, I think ignorance is really the key. So, what does ignorance mean? Ignorance means that if I have this view of the world that is very solid, concrete, permanent, I have opinions about myself and others and situations, and the stronger those opinions are, that's called ignorance. The more open-minded we are, we'll call it wisdom, intelligence, whatever you want to use. And those guideposts of being open-minded or closed-minded, self-centered or selfish, things like that, or selfless, those are ways to define negative versus positive karma. So the more I hold on to my opinions and view them as facts, that's a way to create negative karma. The more I am open-minded to what's going on, that actually creates positive karma. And the same thing if I am look at my motivation, to get back to that concept, and I say, gee, what's my real motivation here? Well, in my example of donation, it was selfish versus selfless. One creates negative karma and one creates positive karma. So that's kind of how I look at ignorance.
Yeah, ignorance is a really interesting one. I I uh I know for myself in the last several years, I've been taking on being more in inquiry and admitting that I really don't know. I really don't know. It's like none of us really know. We have our thoughts and opinions and our views, but to being open to have your mind changed, it's really interesting. I think it really shows a lot of power when we can have our mind changed.
It's the only way you learn anything.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah. And I think about how my mind has changed in big, big ways uh, in the past several years, and I'm really happy about that. It's very disturbing, when you're in the process of it. But I think you have to have a lot of trust for the whole process and go. It's part of attachment too. That's the next one. Attachment. I'm attaching to my opinions and my beliefs and my views, and I have to unattach to those in order to stay in inquiry. Is that a right way of looking at attachment?
yeah, yeah. I mean, so once again, it's being open-minded.
Yeah,
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 and it's kind of almost like retraining our mind.
yeah.
Is our new president coming along in the United States? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, probably most Buddhists would think it's a bad thing. I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know if anything is a bad thing because with enough time, bad things turn into good things and good things turn into bad things. And there's kind of an in and out. And ultimately, I think we're moving into a direction of more of the divine being on this planet and more of good being on this planet. And sometimes our souls take us into places that may not seem happy, but ultimately, I think we need to release and be an inquiry and be open. Be open.
And that's up to us.
Yeah, it's up to us.
Not anyone else can do that for us. So we
Yeah,
blame, oh,
yeah,
politician, he, she, this, that, yeah, sure, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's up to us. We want to be kind. We want a kind world. We want a generous world. We want a compassionate world. We want to help others. Fires in LA. That's up to us. No one's going to come down and swoop down. We don't believe that there is the cavalry's coming to save us.
yes. I,
We are the cavalry.
I believe that too. I believe that too. And I still have what I would consider Christian roots, but I don't believe the cavalry is coming. I think we have been granted all that we need inside ourselves, and you know, the great masters that you mentioned, they have given us so much. So we rather than just throw the tools away and say, "Hey, you guys come help us." We've been given the tools. They're probably like, use them. So we're here to create the world that we want to be in, and we just need to use those tools. That's how I look at it.
Right. And those tools can include a reliance on Jesus Christ or Buddha. We believe that they're actually part of us. So in some ways, they're not going to come out of the blue and maybe just help us, but we can call on them. They are, they're not out there. That would be ignorance, showing duality. There's Jesus, there's Buddha, here I am. They're going to come and help me. Or a wiser way to look at it is, they're all over, including us. So we're all part of the same fabric in that regard.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the third poison is aversion, and I think that is when we draw boundaries around ourselves and don't want to be around those that are irritating and don't want to bring in thoughts that we find displeasing. Is that what aversion is?
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know who wrote that, but I don't know anything about that topic.
Okay, okay.
I'm kidding. Um, yeah, it's once again having a strong opinion. That person, I don't like them, or they're this or they're that, and I'm not this. Strong opinions don't get you anywhere.
Yeah,
More of a version of being a little bit more closed-minded.
yeah. We've
So
seen that a lot where you have a different opinion. I don't even want to be around you. You've cut out of my life.
yeah, and I think, look, in a relative sense, we don't want to necessarily hang out with people who have strong opinions that rub us the wrong way or that we truly dislike, of course. But eventually, we can't just pick and choose. We don't want to, as they would say in Zen, you don't pick and choose. What you get is doesn't mean you have to approve of it, doesn't mean you have to forgive it, but you accept that's how it is. And you just don't let it uh, get under your skin, so to speak. And as they interviewed the Dalai Lama, it's probably 20, 30 years ago, and they asked him, who is your, the best teacher, the best tutor that you've had, during this whole process? This is probably 30, 40 years ago. And he didn't bat an eye. He said, oh, the Chinese government. They taught me more. I'm so grateful to them. They taught me more about life and kindness and myself than anything I could have learned elsewhere. So you never know what you're going to learn.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I feel with aversion that when you're right, we don't want to put ourselves in uncomfortable situations, but I think we can also create boundaries and try to be the most loving we can and connect as much as we can and just allow certain topics to not come up. You know, we're going to talk about this, and this, and not talk about this because we definitely disagree about that, but we can still be connected. I think it's really important to stay connected as much as we can, even though people around us or people that are close to us hold different opinions or strong opinions. Unless it's abusive, I think it's always good to try our best to stay connected.
Yeah, I think there's a balance. So if we're able to, sure, interact with people of all flavors and thoughts, absolutely. But if we don't have that brain power yet, or we're not trained
Mm,
yet, and we know we're going to just walk away angry or get involved in a fracas, then maybe it's best to avoid it. So there's a little bit of a balance there. We're not Buddhists or Jesus just yet.
yeah, so it's really about knowing yourself. I mean, really you have to understand ourselves and where our buttons are pushed and what our reactivity is and how evolved we are and how it's interesting when we're trying something out. Sometimes we push a boundary a little bit to see, okay, are we ready to do that? And then we have this experience and it hurts. And so then, okay, well, maybe we're not ready. Maybe we need to learn a little bit more or grow a little bit more and then try it again later. I
Mhm.
think it's a lot about self-knowledge, self-awareness, how we handle that. Okay, and then the last 2 poisons are ones we're pretty familiar with, pride and envy. I think those are pretty obvious, but do you wanna say a few words about pride and envy?
I really don't, but I will. Um, Pride is just a form of is an illusion that we just buy into and concretize and make it seem like fact. I'm a great father. I'm a great business person, and then when I rub up against something that shows me that I'm not, I'm devastated by it. As opposed to once again, it goes back to that whole being open minded. concept of just non-judgmental, because as we have all these stories running around in our minds, eventually the more we have them, the more we repeat them, then we start to view them as fact, and that's kind of where we get stuck a little bit. And envy, same thing. It's like I can look over there, the grass is greener, or like the dog of the bone story. Dog's got the bone, looks in the river, sees his reflection in the river, and goes, "Ah, that dog's got a bare bone." That one. And he goes to go for it. And of course, in the process, he loses his own bone in the water. So, yeah, there's no value to that. It's all negative.
Yeah, and the reasons I know you don't want to be talking about these poisons, but I think the reasons it's interesting to look at is it's part of self-awareness. It's part of looking at, okay, I can evaluate my life. I can look at these. These are the things that can kind of poison my consciousness and not bring, positive karma to me. And so I can do an inventory of my life and say, well, where am I on this? Oh, you know what? I thought I was further along with ignorance than I am, but I just showed that I was pretty close-minded in the last conversation I had. So now I can say, okay, now I want to change because I want to be in a world that's open-minded. So that's why I think that the poisons are really interesting to look at.
And what I like about it, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about that they don't call them 5 things we should avoid. That's
Right.
bad things. No, it's not the name. The name is 5 poisons. It's like,
Right.
hey, got it. It's a great name.
Yeah, it is a great name. It's a great name because who wants to drink poison?
Yeah,
We do it all the time.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up because that's important. It's like, so when I'm doing that, what I'm basically doing is consuming poison.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay. All right. I'd like to talk a little bit about, I thought I wrote these notes down, but I don't see it now. I want to talk about, I completely dog-eared this area of the book. I know this is hard for a lot of people, definitely not hard for me, but the Buddha taught succinctly, he who harms living beings is for that reason, not Ariya, a noble one. He who does not harm any living being is called an Araya. The Buddha taught that we should not harm living beings, which includes all sentient beings, not just humans. And you go on to kind of temper that because everybody's on a different spectrum of how they believe about harming sentient beings. But I'd like to talk about that in terms of karma. We live in a society that really is very abusive towards animals in so many ways, many that we're not even aware of, whether it's entertainment or product testing, what we eat, what we wear, things like that. And there's karma associated with that. I think that's what you guys are saying, that we can take steps to move that negative karma into more positive karma.
Yeah. So I think first there is this understanding or belief, or we're trying to retrain our minds that because we are all so deeply connected, which doesn't appear that way sometimes, by harming someone else, we're actually harming ourselves. It's kind of the essence of karma, right? If I hurt you, like I said earlier, someone else will hurt me back or will hurt myself. I'll keep doing it, keep perpetuating it. So, with this concept of sentient beings, where it gets expanded, it's not just humans, but it's also animals and insects and things like that. So, if I kill an animal or I kill an insect and I have bad intentions or selfish intentions, then once again, that's in my mind state. Now, there's a big difference between, God forbid, killing an animal and killing a human being and killing an ant, but it's the same. Karma is what it is. So if I'm more likely to kill something, if I'm going to kill something, more likely to kill again, more likely to be an environment, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't really change much now. The fact of the matter is that the karma is much heavier for killing a human being than it is for killing an ant, but it's all the same spectrum.
And I think that I think what you point out again is really important. If we want to be in an environment of peace and harmony, then we would want to take as many actions as possible in our life to create peace and harmony and honor the lives of all around us. And we live in a world that, I mean, you can't just like even walk anywhere without harming somebody. I mean, there's microorganisms, there's ants, there's moths when you're driving and bugs on the, so we're doing I think the thing is doing our best or taking steps to, if we find that we are engaging in a lot of harm, when we awaken to that, that we take some steps back and just reduce it. I think you mentioned in the book something like, if you're a meat eater, cut it down to four days a week or 3 days a week. And if you're a vegetarian, maybe pull back and go, maybe give up eggs. That we take some steps towards minimizing the harm that we're doing to all beings, maybe being more aware of where the ants are on the sidewalk, things like that.
Yeah. I'm not advocating that we all take it to the extreme, because that doesn't last long. And so it's not really easy to keep, go on an extreme diet and let's see how long that lasts. So we do what we can, and we try to improve. So as you mentioned earlier, or we mentioned in the book, if I'm a meat eater and it's important to me, and I eat 4 times a week, well, guess what? If I eat meat 3 times a week, I'm going to save a lot of animals and save lives and feel better as a human being. So, and yeah, you're right. Wherever we go, breathe, drive our car, there's always some microorganism that's going to be killed, or even ants and flies and moths and things like that. So what can you do there? Well, I'm not going to walk to the airport and walk to Europe for a trip, but what I can do is I can A, certainly minimize it, and B, I can also even maybe say a prayer, which is recognizing or being aware of what's happening so that we can mitigate the negativity that we are creating. Our intentions are not bad, so it's not like we're worried about creating negative karma. But if we want to improve the world, then what we can do is say, oh, I just killed that moth as I was driving. May it be free from suffering. If you believe that
Mm-hmm.
life, may it have a better rebirth. So we can say those prayers if and when those of us that eat fish or meat as well. So, the Dalai Lama, I think, eats meat or fish once a week for his health. And I know that, as do we in the Vajrayana, as do many, not even Buddhists, but even, Christians and Jews, of course, they say a prayer when you're eating something, a recognition that life was given so you can benefit.
Yeah, and I will take exception to one thing you said, because I really don't think it's extreme to give up eating animals. I don't. It seems extreme to people, but there's so much good food out there. People think they're being limited if they can't eat animals. It was like there's so much variety, there's so much color, so much good food out there. It really isn't extreme, but I understand that that's the perception of a lot of people. I do think if we each take some steps, generally that's better, and to be aware of what we're doing, so that because I think we can have good intentions but also be ignorant at the same time. So it's like we may have good intentions, but why not find out about really how did that state get on your plate? And if we just rely on ignorance, like I just don't want to know, then I don't know that we've done our best to really be kind and generous. But anyway, I'm always on a mission to learn more and more and more about what the consequences really are of my actions so that I can correct them. And I just invite people to be on that journey as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a difficult conversation to have because we're so conditioned to that it's all really okay. What else you want to talk about when it comes to karma, Morty? What else you want people to know?
Well, I think you just start wherever you are. I didn't make that up. I think that's from Pema Chodron, but it's so true. Just start wherever you are. You're in a good place, you're in a bad place, you're on a green place, a yellow big store, small room, large car, lots of money. It doesn't really matter. Just start wherever you are. And start can mean read a book, it can mean find a teacher, it can mean watch a YouTube channel, it could mean watch this podcast again. It can mean let me learn how to meditate, or let me meditate more or less, or let me go. So just start where you are, and little baby steps work. Some of us are so voracious that we start with big steps. Oh, I'm going to go on a diet tomorrow and it's going to be extreme because that doesn't last. So you just progress and just consistency in small steps. But we can start anytime, any place.
Yeah, yeah, and keep in mind the world that we want to live in. I think that's really important. There's some other things that you talk about in the book: dilution, purification, and transference, that these are kind of ways to oh, let me back up. Let's just say we've lived a whole life and we've been rude, we've been belligerent, we've been wronged, we're always blaming people, we've hurt people, we've lied, we've stolen. Let's just say that's
Thinking about me again. It sounds a lot
no,
like
you told me
you.
you, you told me this is all about me.
Right.
So let's just pretend that that's been my life. And I come upon the
I
beginner's
don't
guide.
have to pretend, but thank you.
We all have skeletons in our closet. We all have some things that we're not proud of.
Exactly.
Um, but I think people get overwhelmed. Okay, so I've been a bad person. I just am a bad person. I'm going to be a bad person. How can I move out of this? Or really, how can I ever turn this around? And so you all talk about how I think you just kind of take steps that are more positive karma, and that overall that kind of dilutes the negative karma. Am I getting that right?
That works. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the simple equation, right? If until now you've been creating a lot of negative karma and all of a sudden you start creating positive karma, then you're going to dilute the negative karma. So it's just, it's like, so then that's the simple way. And you could start that, like, as I said earlier, you could just start that right now. And then I think the other concept that you're talking about is really purification, which is you can, in Tibetan Buddhism, and also in other religions as well, there's a way to purify negative actions. Actions, another word for karma, that we've done in the past. And we describe it in detail in the book, which I'll just go through it briefly now, which is the first thing you want to do is you want to have some connection, make some connection with a higher being. And that could be the universe, could be universal energy. It could be Jesus Christ. It could be the Buddha. It could be Vajrasattva, who's a purification. We use her or him for that deity for purification purposes. And you make that connection. You kind of feel for maybe through meditation, and you make that connection. And then the second thing is, so you take you can even say, I rely, or I take refuge in that greater being. Just another way of phrasing that connection. And then what you can do is you, lack of a better word, you confess. Confess to yourself or to that greater being, hey, I yelled at my dog. I shouldn't have yelled at my dog. I got really angry when they didn't pay attention to what I was saying and doing, whatever. And then next thing is you express regret, and you say, I'm never going to do that again. And then after that, you say, I will now go and create some positive karma and dedicate the merit for what I'm going to create in that positive karma to reduce suffering in the world. These are examples. Everyone can choose their own flavor of anything that I just said.
Mm-hmm.
That is a purification practice that we do. Some of us do it on a daily basis so that you can purify the negative karma that we created.
I really like that. I really like that whole process, because I think that, like the Catholics, they have a system where they confess to the priest, and I think that's a good practice. But you don't need to have a priest. You don't need to have a priest. That you can create that process yourself. And so I see this purification as a way to kind of really find a lot of freedom in yourself when you feel, rather than walk around with guilt or shame or just kind of bad vibes,
Mhm.
that we do have a process to cleanse ourselves, to purify ourselves by calling on the divine, or whatever that the divine is for us.
Right.
And I just really like that process that you just shared. So thank you for that. The other thing that I really, really, really liked was sharing a process when you're dying and having somebody there with you. And we don't have to talk about it in detail because it's in your book, but that there's a process to help people relieve or purify their karma in their last hours and last minutes. I just thought that was so beautiful.
Yeah. And that's what my mom's expertise, one of his many expertises, and it's a concept of called POA, POWA or PHOWA. So that, we believe that how are we going to die? We're going to die the way we live. If I'm an angry person, then I'm probably going to, now I'm going to be an angry person in a minute from now. And if before I die, I'm an angry person, and as I go into the afterlife, my consciousness will retain that anger and continue on. So when I get through the afterlife and I'm ready to be reborn, that guess what's coming with me? The only thing you can
Yeah.
take is your karma. So this is a practice that allows you once again to make a connection with a higher being, and then allows you to transfer that negative karma to that higher being so that you can become lighter, so to speak, and go forward without that baggage.
I think that's so beautiful. I think that's such a, I mean, I'm going to give this to my daughters in case they're around when I'm dying. I just think it's so beautiful to have a process, kind of a purification process. Now, Buddhists believe in reincarnation, and I think many, many, many people believe in reincarnation. Then there's Christians, there's other religious practices that think this is our one shot, this is it. So I guess I have two questions. What one is when we die, we have a certain amount, a certain karma, right? A certain negative, positive karma in our quote karma account. And is the belief that when we come into our next life, we're coming in with that same account, and then we have this lifetime now to have more positive karma and work off the negative karma? Is that the belief?
Yeah. So what you said is accurate. I'm going to say it a little bit differently, which is not so much that we have a number. You know, there are books that talk about weighing negative karma versus positive karma, things like that, and that's okay to believe in it that way. The way I look at it is we have these tendencies that we now have in our state of mind, in our consciousness. I tend to be angry if you yell at me. I tend to yell back. I tend to be cheap. I tend to be attached to money. I tend to be generous. Whatever it is, these tendencies or these karmic traces, or we'll call them habits, whatever synonym we want to use, that's in our mind state, in our stream of consciousness. And we take that wherever we go, unless you change it, including at this very moment. And that includes also at the moment before death and after death. The consciousness is what we believe lives on. It's always changing. We call it rebirth. And so that's what the only thing you can take. You can't take your house, your dog, your wife, your money. The only thing you take with you is your karma, whether you like it or not.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
So does that answer your question?
No, it does, and then I'm thinking, like, from a Christian perspective, for people who don't believe in reincarnation, and I do know a lot of Christians who do believe in reincarnation, but many, many don't. Many people say this is a kind of one and done lifestyle, a lifetime. But even that, to me, the whole karma thing is also about living the Christ life. Like
Right.
Jesus said, "Follow me."
Yeah.
And so we would want to, in this lifetime, whether you believe in reincarnation or not, this whole conversation about karma is really important because it helps you live the Christ life.
Right. So if I'm not of course, as familiar with it as you are, but if before I die, I believe I'm going to be meeting up with my maker, do I want to go up there with my baggage and my anger and my irritation, annoyance, and trigger and stuff? Or reactivity? Or do I want to go up there, sober, authentic, loving, and compassionate? And those are synonymous with everything we talked about from a karmic perspective.
Right, right. I just wanted to make this whole conversation accessible to everyone, as you kind of did in the beginning when you said all faiths really have karma in them.
Sure.
But yeah, sure. So, one last thing I wanted to ask you about, I was on your website and I saw that you have a karma game. And I'd love to hear about that because it looks really, really cool. There's not a really clear explanation of it, but there's some pictures of it. And I was just wondering about how that came to be, how you came to create that, or if you had somebody else create that. And then tell me a little bit about the game.
Yeah, I created that with a friend, Tom Seidman. Took us, I think, about a year and a half, very long year and a half. And because, most games are about conquering,
Right.
getting money, killing, living, dying, power, taking over territories, things like that. And this is a very different. This is about whoever accumulates the most karma, good karma wins. And what do you win? Well, you get to go to the Pure Land, or you get to, become enlightened, or you get to have better rebirth, that kind of thing. And it takes you through several different lifetimes because karma goes on and on and on. And asks a lot of questions which determine whether or not are you're going to earn good or bad karma. So there's a lot of fun questions out there where one person asks the other, and then you get to be it gets to be determined. I'm not going to say how, on whether or not what you said is, if you bought a tie and you went to the store and you returned the tie and for your husband, and they gave you a double refund. Instead of $75, they give you twice. And now you go home, but you don't realize it. And now you're back, you're 10,000 miles away from Hawaii or whatever. What do you do? And then you get to tell your story of what you're going to do. And then based upon that, guess what? You'll earn negative karma or maybe not so negative karma. So it's a lot of fun. And it teaches you about karma.
Yeah, you got to watch your intentions because I could just see people trying to cheat that game. Oh, I would call them up in a minute and give them back the $75. Would you really?
Yeah. Or, yeah. And well, sorry, I'm not done yet, which is that. And then you call up the store and they disconnect you 3 times.
Oh,
30 minutes later. Now, what are you going to do? Okay.
yeah.
This is Buddhist. Now, what are you going to do?
Yeah, yeah. At some point, you got to be honest with yourself. Yeah, I love that. So, I lead an annual retreat at Unity Village, and it's a whole planet spirituality retreat. And we have like a social night on Friday night and also on Saturday night. And I have had some little games there that more along how to get to know each other and questions that you're sharing, things like that.
Yeah.
But I think I want to get a hold of your game because I want to look at that and see if it's something that we might want to set up tables and play that game.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
So how do I get that game? Is it on your website or is it on Amazon or?
Go to the Jigma Linkba Center website, which is BuddhistSanDiego.com,
Okay.
BuddhistSanDiego.com, or whatever contact information you give for us at the, as part of this podcast, just contact us.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love the idea that there's a game out there that isn't about, domination and control. Because that's what most of them are. And how will we create a world that's not that if we keep playing the same games? Same thing with our entertainment. It's all about the same old stuff. And so, it's time to create some new stories. And so, kudos to you. I know there's no bank account, but positive karma for you.
Thank you.
Ching for creating that game. I'm excited to see it. All right. So, Mordy, did you have any last words that you might want to share with people that we haven't shared or talked about today?
Yeah, just do the best you can. Can't do anything more.
Yeah. And I'll have all of your links to your book and your center and the game.
Thank you.
On the show notes. So thanks so much for being with us and sharing Karma for Beginners. And hopefully this will inspire people to start being more self-aware and looking at what kind of steps we can take today and in this moment. And I do love the idea of starting with, even though it's outside of us, starting with what world do I want to live in and create the attributes of the world we want to live in and then bring that inside. That's what I want to create. That's who I need to be. And I think that's a really helpful exercise. And I appreciate you letting us know about that.
Thank you for hosting. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I wish you the best. Thank you, everyone who has joined us. May you be blessed. Yes.
Thank
Namaste.
You. Namaste.
And I now close the Spiritual Forum.